Hello friends, this is Dr. Jimmy again, here to tell you the remaining, I hope remaining, secrets of Halloween Horror Nights 23. For those of you who come into these things ass backwards, this is the fourth part of my series on the revelations of Halloween Horror Nights 23. Where I reveal to you early on what's actually going to happen in October. And if you're watching this part before you've seen part 1, 2, and 3 in the correct order, you are a silly person. But just in case someone's that silly, I have to give a little disclaimer. As I have expressed in the previous videos, this is an April Fool's hoax. Nothing that I say in this or any of the other videos is true. It is all false. Everything that I'm saying is a lie. Every statement I make is false, including everything I have already said up till now, and the last statement I just made. Thus, that means that he said it was true, but he's lying, therefore it's a lie. But if he says it's a lie, and then that's a lie too, so it means it's true. That's right. It's a conundrum. You're stuck now, trying to ponder and figure out for yourself if anything I'm saying is true, or if anything I'm saying is a lie, and you're not sure one way or the other. I'm evil that way. So, let us proceed. I've already described in the preceding videos all the houses that will be presented for you at Halloween Horror Nights 23, and some, but not all, of the scare zones. So, I believe I described all the scare zones that were in Universal Studios Florida. I shall now proceed to describe the scare zones at Islands of Adventure, as both parks are being used for this year's event. So the remaining scare zones at Islands of Adventure, when you go into Port of Evil, because again you'll be able to enter either park, and there are commemorations of Universal Classic Monsters. You go into studio side, you're presented with a glorious scare zone that I described earlier of Frankenstein. When you go into Islands of Adventure, it's Dracula. It's called Castle of Dracula, and you'll have vampires attacking you all the way up to the big part when you go up to the lagoon where they're going to recreate it where the Terror Throne was back in '05. You're going to have a huge Gothic structure, the Castle of Dracula, and every imaginable type of vampire, from the old Nosferatu type to the Anne Rice sort of sexually confused, aristocratic, romantic, Renaissance clothing wearing long-haired blonde vampires like Lestat type vampires, all the way up to the vicious, bloodthirsty 30 Days of Night vampires. You're going to have all these different kinds of undead lurking about. You're even going to have, up in the tower of the castle, a very sparkly type of vampire that, and what they're actually going to have is all the other vampires are going to go and, during a special ritual, beat the frickin' crap out of the sparkly Edward vampire and throw him off the castle into a pit. To the cheers of the audience. Yes. So Dracula himself will also appear, but it's basically his whole kingdom of vampires throughout time and space. Marvel Superhero Island is an amazing scare zone that will cover a unique history of Universal Horror. Back in the 50s, when television first started, they licensed their movies, which had only been seen in theaters, to through a company called Screen Gems. Today, Screen Gems is part of Sony Columbia, but back then it primarily did television programming, and they licensed to Screen Gem a package called Shock Theater, And so these different television stations around the country in syndication could show the classic Universal monsters on the television for the first time. And what happened in many locations, inspired perhaps by Mila Nurmi's Vampira show in Los Angeles, was that the local stations hired some fellow to put on a ghoulish aspect and host the program, like Zachary or Dr. Paul Bearer in Florida, Zachary in New York, or the ghoul in Ohio. Or I think there was one in Chicago called Sven Ghoulie. There were all sorts of other great characters. Ghoulardi, yes, Ghoulardi was the great one in I think one place. Ghoulardi, Sven Ghoulie. There are numerous in California after Vampira went away. There was a fellow there. I can't remember his name, but his name was similar to the character Peter Vincent in Fright Night. In fact, the show in California was called Fright Night. So there's a connection there. All these different horror hosts, and so this scare zone is going to be called Shock Theater, and will feature some classic horror hosts throughout history, some of whom, and they've got the rights to the different ones. Some of them have passed away, but there'll be a Vampira, for example. There's a fellow here in Florida who's recreated Dr. Paul Bearer. He will actually make appearances. Some of the living horror hosts that are still alive will make public appearance. I don't know if they can get Zachary. He's like in his 90s. He might not be able to, although Florida's a place to go if you're that old. But you're going to have a lot of these great horror hosts, and many who are still working, like Count Gore Duvall in Washington, D.C., or others are out there, and they're going to invite them here to make public appearances. And so you'll actually have real live horror hosts, not just blood and guts fake ones, but real live horror hosts, along with characters dressed up as famous horror hosts, along with Universal classic monsters that aren't commonly known. They're going to present, they were part of the Shock Theater package, like the cat from The Cat Creeps, or the Atomic Man, Man with the Atom Brain, the Jungle Captive Woman that was played by Aquanetta, other fearsome universal horror films from that era that we don't see so much of. Rondo Hatton as the Creeper. These kind of things that were actually a part of Shock Theater, along with the big names of Universal Horror. They're going to be in that scare zone, and they're going to be commented on by the hosts the way they did in the shows. The more B-movie Universal stuff will be there with the horror hosts, is what I'm saying. So it's going to be quite a ghast for this scare zone. It's going to be like the amusing scare zone, but a great photo op scare zone too. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay. Toon Lagoon is going to be one of the few scare zones that will be a throwback to Halloween Horror Nights history. There's a couple of scare zones like this, and both of them will feature the icons that never got to be icons. All the other icons are locked up in the Horror Unearthed house. But this one, Cindy, will be given her own scare zone called Cindy's Playground. And it's going to be in Toon Lagoon, where her house would have been, in recreation of what Halloween Horror Nights in 2002 would have actually been if it hadn't gotten fucked up. So you're actually going to have Cindy with her evil toys, like Nightmare and the Treek and the Foon, and the what was the other one? The dino-human hybrid creature, Carnage. I hope they can get away with having Carnage there. They're going to try, and hopefully Disney won't realize what they're doing till it's done. And they're going to have all of these as Cindy's playthings, and they're actually going to give Cindy the porcelain doll's mask. Now, she won't be burnt under it, though, because we all want Cindy to look like Cindy, but she'll have the doll's mask at times, and she'll be like the original Cindy concept had been. So that's Cindy's Playground, her Cindy's Toy Box. I forget if they're going to call it Toy Box or Playground. It might be Toy Box. And that'll be in Toon Lagoon. And they're going to try to get the foam in the streets again, like they had in 2002. I don't know if they're going to, safety issues, but they want to get the foam. If they can get that, approved, it's going to be foaming in that scare zone. All right. Jurassic Park is Forest of the Wolves, and they're going to be just like the other scare zones that spotlight classic Universal monsters. This will be given to the Wolfman, but also to the American Werewolf in London and any other werewolf they can think of. And there'll be all sorts of wolfish, lycanthropic, beastly creatures running about in the forest, hiding behind trees, in little caves. You're going to set up like the Knuckle Grunts had back in 2005, and whole thing is going to be a scary forest full of wolves in that whole Jurassic Park area. So, beware the moors. Yeah. Then when you get to, you're not going to have anything in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter because they're not using it. The Lost Continent, however, the bits of it that will be open, will be set up as the Legend of Darkness. And the Lord of Darkness from the film Legend will be presented. He's not really a Horror Nights icon. He's another character that has popped up at Horror Nights in the past. The Lord of Darkness will be there with the little goblins and creatures, the witch Meg Mucklebones, and other creatures from Legend that have never been seen at Howling Horror Nights before. So they're going to bring those in, and they're going to have a dead unicorn, and it'll be quite fun if you ever saw that one. So then we go on to Toon Lagoon. There's nothing there, but there's two other scare zones nevertheless. They're not really in Islands of Adventure. They're between Islands of Adventure and something else. Well, they're access paths. The first one will be up as you go towards Sinbad. There's going to be a path that takes you out of Islands of Adventure and takes you right up back behind the sound stages, where you come back in by the library and into Universal Studios Florida, so you can get from one park to the other. In 2004, this was where the Fright Yard scare zone was located. Well, this year, it's going to be a scare zone called The Incredible Shrinking Man, based on the classic Universal science fiction film from the 50s. And when you go into the scare zone, there'll be a big wall of fog, just like the fog that shrunk the fellow. And then you're going to have all these oversized props, like you've been shrunk, a giant telephone and giant, things. And then you're going to come to this huge dollhouse. Remember, like the schoolhouse, and you have to go through that to get through the scare zone. And when you go into the dollhouse, you're going to be attacked by an evil cat. A giant evil cat will be outside through projections or whatever, and you'll see the cat projections of the cat's face, growling, trying to get you through the walls of the dollhouse, and this giant paw with claws will come through the window of the dollhouse to get you. I guess they're going to have a character working the claw, I don't know, but it's going to be like this cat is trying to get you inside that dollhouse. And when you get out on the other side, then they're not conspicuously not going to have the spider. Why? Because they already got a giant spider back in Hollywood. Told you about before. So why would they have a giant spider here? It wouldn't make sense. It would be too much. So they go through that, and then you get into Universal Studios Florida. The other one goes from when you're going into some of the sound stages to get to those queue lines on the Islands of Adventure side for such houses as the Jekyll and Hyde and the Creature from Black Lagoon. Well, not the Creature. Creature you can get them from the top, from Sinbad. But when you go in that way, you need to cross a bridge. Remember Harvest of Souls, or whatever it was called, that scarecrow thing they had set up in 2004. Oh, excuse me. That's going to be set up as a gauntlet to go through. It's not going to be, the Harvest of Souls. It's going to be given to Eddie. The other almost was, but never quite got to be an icon. And he's going to have his own scare zone. It's going to be called Eddie's Girls. It's going to be Eddie, and he's going to be the head of a huge chainsaw drill team, bigger than any before, and they're all going to be girls except for Eddie. Eddie and a bunch of female chainsaws. And it's not going to be like last year's Prisoners, all butch with their orange, jumpsuits. These are going to be like hot country chicks, like Daisy Duke, and they're not going to be all burnt and scarred. No, they're just going to be really pretty girls with chainsaws who are going to kill you. and they're all in love with Eddie, and they're going to do anything Eddie says, and Eddie says, kill those guests, and then come after you. So you've got Eddie with his harem of chainsaw-wielding, crazy redneck girls. It should be a gas, and I do mean what you put in your chainsaw to make it run. Yes, that kind of gas. So I think I covered all of the scare zones. So what I have left are the shows. There are 2 shows. One will be in Islands of Adventure. It'll be the Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure. Not much will be changed for that because it's always the same. You know, pop culture from the current year, twisted and made fun of. And it'll be in, but for the first time since 2005, it'll move back to the Toon Lagoon Theatre. So it'll be in there and make use of that set and setup rather than what they have at the Fear Factor stage. So that's going to be the one show, and the other show will be at Universal Studios Florida on the Beetlejuice stage, and that will be the Icons show, because they're going to have a show featuring the Icon for the event, which I have not mentioned yet. Yes, out of sheer modesty. As I mentioned in the first video, the whole idea for a century of scares came from a question, a comment that I made in the VIP lounge back in 2010. And as a result, my idea inspired this whole event. And so this year, the Icon will be called the Historian. He's a demented professor in his stuffy old room full of books, who is obsessed with the history of Universal horror. In his tweed jacket and his pet cat, Evil Cat, he will be obsessing about the history and willing to go to any lengths to obtain historical research, even if it means murder. Yes, it'll be a demented version, a demented and exaggerated version of, I don't know, somebody I know? Maybe. Oh my, indeed. They're going to take a twisted, demented version of no one else but me and turn him into an icon. An icon that is largely inspired of my own bizarre persona. With maybe a little bit of Charles Gray and the guy who narrates the Rocky Horror Picture Show thrown in. But that's the sort of character that is going to be the icon this year. The demented historian. And he's going to be in his library in the Beetlejuice stage and invite everyone in and give us an interesting history of Universal horror and bring back, of course, the great characters like Dracula and Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and the icons from Halloween Horror Nights past like Jack and the caretaker and the storyteller and the director and Lady Luck and Bloody Mary and whoever else he conjures up. And of course they're going to attack the audience at some point because that has to happen. Or some damn fool out of the audience gets brought up on stage and gets dismembered for some reason, because that's what always happens at these delightful shows. And isn't it nice then that, in a way, so much of the event has come out of my own obsessions. So there you have it, my friends. Halloween Horror Nights 23, fully revealed. Unless, of course, this was all just a load of hokum. It's up to you to figure it out. And I wish you a happy April Fool's Day.